Hi, ever wonder what it's like to work another profession or live in the underworld? Listen to unsuspecting riders give a 10 to 15 minute personal masterclass as I spontaneously interview them as they enter my taxi. I'm your host, Simon Rushton, and this is Taxi Chronicles. Morning. Yes, we're back with another episode, another rider. Today we have the lovely Vedika all the way from Asia. And she's going to tell us about her experience of growing up in India and then moving to America and then finally ending up with us in London.
Yeah.
So nice to have you here today, Vedika.
Yeah.
Okay, so first question would be, what was it like? What kind of child were you when you were growing up?
Right.
In school.
Yeah, taking it all the way back. So I had a unique childhood because my parents were traveling a lot of the time. So it's just my younger brother. He is less than 2 years younger than me. So we're like effectively twins, and we had a big dog. And
You said he's 2 years younger than you?
less than 2 years.
Oh,
So
less than 2 years.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, we just loved being in charge of the house. Like it was our running our own little government.
Okay.
And in terms of what type of child I was, I think I was very curious. I was constantly trying to explore the neighborhood, organizing stuff. I remember this one time we organized a hide and seek match, but with the entire neighborhood.
It was all kids?
All kids. Maybe 20 of us, and you could hide anywhere in the neighborhood, but you had to come up with ground rules because you didn't want to lose anybody, of course. And then I remember this one other time, our apartment was above an office, and the office got broken into. And the person who broke into the office, the thief, they went through our driveway to our house. So my brother and I thought it was our responsibility to investigate the crime.
Okay.
And yeah, things like that. It was a very free-spirited childhood. If we were curious about something, we just went ahead and did it because our parents weren't around so much of the time.
What did your parents do?
My dad runs a small business in South India. He runs a flour mill.
I'm making flour for bread.
Yeah, making flour for bread, for rotis, of course, our Indian bread. Yeah, so that was my childhood.
Okay. So what's your profession?
I work in venture capital.
Venture capital.
Yeah. Okay. Do you know what that is? Have you heard of that?
But you can explain it to me.
Okay. Yeah. Totally. So I invest in really early stage companies.
Okay.
And we work with the founders of those companies to help them grow, and we hope they will be very big companies one day.
Okay. So do they find you or do you find them?
Yeah, good question. So most of the times they find us, but it doesn't necessarily come directly from them. A lot of it is introductions through people we know and trust.
Okay.
And sometimes we find them as well.
Okay. So what kind of companies do you usually look for?
What kind of companies do we usually look for? That's a good question. So we usually look for technology companies, so where the technology is a core competence of the business, and a company that's capitalizing on some sort of consumer behavior shift. So some sort of behavior is changing in the world, and they're building on top of that, or some sort of technology shift.
So everybody's working from home.
So we're
technology for organization, planning.
Yeah, that's definitely a consumer behavior shift, remote and distributed work, and we've been investing in that since 2017, so before it was cool. But also Uber, GPS technology, on your iPhone obviously makes it possible.
Yeah.
So that would be like Uber is a company that's capitalizing on a lot of technology shifts.
I understand.
Yeah.
That's good. So what's the pro? Is that what you wanted to be when you was growing up in school, or
No.
what did you want to be?
That's a good question. I don't know if I was ever those kids who was like, I want to be an astronaut when I grow up. There was actually something I was really interested in being, which was a detective. I read like these series of books called Nancy Drew, and they're about like a girl detective and how she basically like, she's really curious about the world, and I've tried to like model after her. But like she finds these like mysteries to investigate just by living her life. And I loved these books. Like there's like hundreds of them, and I've probably read like hundreds of them as well. I read every single one that was in our school library, and there were maybe like 200.
How did you decide what you were going to study? Because if you weren't sure what you wanted to do, then your studying, your subjects would be, it's like you're quite open to any subject then.
Yeah, so I went to college in the US, and you typically take the first year to actually explore and figure out like what subjects you want to double down on in the form of a degree. But I studied economics, and I was starting to get interested in economics before I went to college, because my dad had a lot of these like behavioral economics textbooks lying around the house, and you know, I just like would pick them up and start reading. So yeah, that's probably where like my interest in economics came from.
Okay, that's good. So the degree you did was
Economics.
Economics. Okay, that's good. And what did you learn? What have you learned about this whole industry that you've been in, from your uni to the venture capitalism that you're in now, that you wish you knew when you started?
That's a good question. One thing I wish I knew when I started university, or one thing I wish I knew before I got my first job, was when I was getting my first job, I really put focus on the company I was going to work for. So I'd be like, okay, I'm going to go work for Uber, instead of being like, I'm going to go work for this like person who works inside of Uber. And my first few jobs, I picked the companies, and they were good jobs. Like I got a lot out of them. But for my current job, I was much more focused on like the person I was going to work for, and that's been like a lot more rewarding to have taken that approach.
So you, in the job interview, you're making sure that you feel comfortable with that person.
It's not just in the job interview. Even before you go to the interview, even like before you apply to the company, I think you should have a sense of who it is that you want to learn from.
Okay, that's interesting.
And go like target those people. I mean, I have no idea if it's the better approach, but it's definitely worked out better for me to do it this way. And like, since everybody's living so much of their lives online, people will leave all these like digital breadcrumbs of their identity and their thought process all over the internet, and you can use that to really figure out, oh, like this is the person I want to work for, or like this is a list of 10 people I want to work for.
What advice would you give to somebody who wants to work in a venture capitalism?
Good question. So venture capital is like kind of notoriously hard to get into, but I think there's definitely like ways in. The way I went about it was very much like a fake it till you make it mentality. So I started writing these, what I called fantasy investment memos before I had the job. So let's say like a venture capital deal was announced in like tech media, like TechCrunch, if you know what that is. But basically it's just like a tech media publication.
Okay.
And when a company raises a round of funding, and it's like interesting enough to the TechCrunch audience, they cover it. So they say like, this company raised this round of funding. Like company Uber raised a $20 million whatever Series A round, right? And then what I would do is, if the company looked interesting, I would try to write like a little memo on like what I liked and didn't like about the company, and if I had seen that deal,
How you would have
my thought exactly how I would have evaluated it.
Okay.
And then I went from one memo to the other memo to the other memo, and one memo led me to the next. And then when my boss was hiring for my current role, I sent him some of these memos. Okay. And I think it's a big part of why I actually got the job. So I think it's not just about venture capital. Like, if you want to get into any job, the internet does make it theoretically easier to start doing some version of that job today. You probably can't do the whole job because you're not actually doing the job, but there's probably some version of it that you can start doing today.
Yeah, I understand. That's good. The route of education, knowing that you're in venture capitalism.
Yes.
Would you have taken the same route of education? Or
that's a good question. No, I wouldn't have gone to college.
You wouldn't have gone to college?
No.
Okay. I'm not sure how you...
Obviously, this is like a very privileged perspective, but no, I think... I don't think college really, like, for a lot of reasons, sets people up the best, and it doesn't feel like it should take 4 years and cost parents and families hundreds of thousands of dollars, at least in the US, to educate their children. That just seems completely off. And in college, it's like people are being, like, your teachers and your professors, they're being paid to pay attention to you, which is so different from how the real world works.
Go on. Okay, that's interesting.
So I think I may have started doing like little internships or whatever, like even work study programs earlier instead of going to college. And if I had gone to college, I would have studied computer science, I think.
Do the venture capitalism business, your company, do they have their own training package?
They do not. My company is only 2 people.
Okay.
It's me and my boss. And my boss is in LA and I live in London, of course.
Okay.
So
you're up at certain hours?
Huh?
You're up at inconvenient hours?
Yes. Yeah. My sleep routine is not ideal at the moment. But I love what I do, so...
Well, you've been a great
thank you.
Guest.
This is such a cool idea. I love it.
Thanks. The last question is, what's the impact you want to have on the world?
I want to help a lot more people find work that they love.
Okay.
And I run a little side project where I feature top talent anonymously looking for their next thing.
Do you want to give a shout out?
Yeah.
Say what it is?
Yeah, it's called Talent Drops, and you can go to our... It's a newsletter that goes out every 2 to 3 weeks, and the URL is talent.substack.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, thanks a lot for that.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
We wish you well.
Yeah.
We hope you liked that interview. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to get the latest daily episode. Ever considered investing in the continent with the fastest growing economy and population on Earth? The same continent that holds 30% of the world's known natural resources? Then listen to our sister podcast, Africa Investor Stories, where you will hear real investors with real stories from around the world share their experience of investing in Africa. We post Monday and Thursday at 10 a.m.